All right, now that we've discussed the political and the economic aspects of the war, I want to get into the military strategy that is at play here, and particularly the Iranian military strategy and how they're countering the United States and Israel. So first things first, how is the Iranian government, how is the Iranian military still maintaining a functioning military order despite the fact that their supreme leader has been assassinated and their top military and political leaders are currently being assassinated? Are they still doing that? Now, the 12-day war actually woke them up to the reality that war is looming on their heads, and they would have to have a working strategy in place so as to defend their homeland. Now, I need to clarify how the Iranian government works here, how the Iranian system works here, how the Iranian military and the IRGC work. First, you have the Iranian government, which is the highest, which represents the highest political civilian entity in the entire nation, and then you have the IRGC, which is the most powerful armed force that has extensive control over the economy, and it has control over the military strategy of the axis of resistance. And their task, their primary task, and perhaps their most essential task, is to defend and to protect the Islamic Revolution. And they only answer to the supreme leader. And then you have the Artesh, which is the regular Iranian army. It's the national army like most other nations do. And their job, their primary task is to defend the sovereignty of the Iranian homeland. Now, the Iranian military thinkers have thought that they kind of knew that if the enemy were to attack, they would first off lead with the decapitation strike against the supreme leader and then follow suit with attacks on their military and political leaders. And that's how the domino falls if you have a centralized system. So in this case, what they did was they activated the Mosaic defense doctrine. So this is a security system. This is a decentralized system where control is delegated to lower level commanders, so that the military can still operate independently if communication with the central command is broken. So what they essentially did was they drew up contingency plans which were pre-approved by the supreme leader way before the war even began, probably months or years leading up to this war. They divided the IRGC into 31 semi-autonomous units, 31 independent groups, which have their own province. They're operating from their own province. They're spread out across 30 provinces and one for Tehran. And each of them have a military of their own. They have their own leadership. They have their own intelligence units, and they have their own arsenal of drones, missiles, and whatnot. So the idea here is to keep the body functioning even if the head is struck. Now, this plan works at two levels. First, you have the US's military advantage, which is in high-end air power, and then precision strike capability, superior intelligence, recon, and surveillance capabilities as well. Now, the Mosaic defense system, the Mosaic defense strategy, how it works, it can asymmetrically counter those threats by heavily decentralizing the system to the extent that a single strike, that a single attack on the leadership cannot take out the entire system, and therefore it cannot end the war on the US's terms. And then secondly, it makes the war politically, economically, and militarily exhausting for the United States, because this defense strategy gives the army high endurance. And that is exactly how they survived the initial shock, and that is how they're continually absorbing the repeat shocks, and they're still able to retaliate through multiple channels, and they're raising the costs of a prolonged war. Now, as the Iranian foreign minister said, that this is the product, the Mosaic defense is a product of over 20 years, studying 20 years of American military defeats in the East and the West, and that is Mosaic defense.